Right, today's talk, the curse of technology. You know, I'm not a technology hater. I'm not. But, you know, there are some issues that technology gives us. We like to think that technology fixes everything. But actually, it can fuck some stuff up, really. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So hello, first of all. I'm Dave. I'm a writer. I'm a broadcaster. I'm a consultant. I'm a very irritating guy who does far too many things. So I want to talk about some of the stuff that we're learning and what we're learning about technology and the way that we use it and how that's affecting our ideas. So the first thing is that we know that it takes time, it takes thinking, proper applied thinking, to be able to come up with ideas, to be able to solve problems. And the way that you do this is you need to immerse yourself in the problem and wrap your head around it. And there's a wonderful expression that I love, is to wrap the tentacles of your mind around the problem. And you're finding what are the edges, what are the bits that move, what are the opportunities, what are the things that we need to leave alone. And you're getting to know that by wrapping your mind around it. And then you get all these little bits of information that are in your brain. And you're kind of like holding little bits of information in your brain that you're able to, oh, sorry, excuse me. Loving the talk so far, could do with more kittens. Okay, thank you. So where was it? You're holding bits of information in your head, and you're trying to bring these bits of information together. Sorry, excuse me. Kittens would greatly improve your talk. So thank you. That's not really very helpful. So, oh, thank you. So as you can see, when you get interrupted, we're in this constant interruption society. When you get interrupted, you lose all these little bits, all these little trains of thought, all these little nuggets of information that are really important that you've put into the front part of your brain, the conscious part of your brain. And when you lose those, it takes you time to dive deep, and you're probably never going to get that back. Now, we're in a constant interruption society, and each time we get interrupted by an email, by a tweet, by Instagram, by Facebook, by whatever, we resurface. And it means that we're not getting the time to dive deep, to properly wrap our minds around things and understand them properly. And this is leading to a shallowness of thought. And I think that this is a real problem. We're not getting the depth of thought that we used to have. And of course, these days, I don't know how many of you get smartwatches? Yeah, a few of you. I know that some of you are just pretending that you didn't hear me and you haven't got arms that are functional. But smartwatches are just giving us, they're just more effective ways for us to be interrupted. And all of those interruptions are stopping us from having proper quality depth of thought. Now, your brain is like a muscle. It grows and shrinks according to how you use it. So just around the corner from here, UCL did a study a few years ago into taxi drivers that were learning the knowledge. And they compared them to bus drivers. So they did brain scans of bus drivers and taxi drivers who, well, people who are about to do the knowledge, and then people who succeeded at doing the knowledge. And they found that, you know, the people at the beginning, as you were sort of learning, wanting to be a taxi driver and being a bus driver, you know, sort of similar kind of brains. And then they scanned them both at the end, and of course the bus driver's brain hadn't really changed. But the taxi driver's brain had significantly changed. The hippocampus, which is kind of like underneath your brain, the hippocampus, which is responsible for motor skills and memory skills and spatial stuff particularly, had significantly grown in those who successfully passed the knowledge. Now, the knowledge is 20,000 streets in London. You have to know every single theatre in order up Shaftesbury Avenue. You have to know where every single hotel is. You have to know how the traffic changes at different times of day. It takes about 14 attempts to pass the exam for the knowledge, 14. And it takes about 4 years hard study. It's like a degree to be able to do this. So it's incredible. And because it's this spatial stuff, they noticed it really, really affected the hippocampus. Now, people who learn languages, It's more to do with the cerebral cortex, but you can see that the density of neurons grow in particular parts of the brains as people learn new languages. Now, it's not just about growth. What our brains do is they actually trim the stuff that we don't use. So the stuff that we don't need anymore, as a child, if we don't use that stuff anymore, then we actually lose those skills. And our brain doesn't grow it back, it just trims it. So our brains get trimmed. You would think that us being as advanced as we are as a species now, that our brains would be the largest they've ever been. They're actually the smallest they've been in 10,000 years. Our brains have been shrinking because actually we don't need to know what the weather's going to be like this afternoon by looking at the horizon. We don't need to know where north is. We don't need to know how to track. We don't need to have the ability to be able to know if there's a threat, a hunter, close by. So we're using our brains less and less, and what we're doing is we're outsourcing our memories, we're outsourcing our cognitive abilities, and we're just about to outsource our decision-making to technology. As we do that, we're using our brains less and less. And I tell you that the brain trims the stuff that we don't need, our brains will continue to shrink if we do that. And that is something that concerns me, because technology, yes, there's great parts to it, but if we've got a weak brain, then our weaker brains are going to come up with weaker kind of ideas and weaker kinds of solutions. Now, when you're trying to solve a problem, the first thing you do is you research. And what's the first thing that you do when you research? You do that, yeah? You go there. Now how many of you visit when you're doing some stuff, how many of you on a search visit the second page of Google? Okay, there's a few of you. How many of you visit the third page of Google? How many of you actually knew there was a fourth page? You know, it's actually hardly anyone goes on to the second page. If you look at search results when things come up, the first search result accounts for more than 30% of the clicks on any search. The first search result, number one. And that goes down to about 3% once you get to the seventh click. You can imagine how far it goes down. Now, what did Google do? Well, they take information and they scan it to see what they think is the most suitable piece of information to give you. What's the most relevant piece of information? They've got incredibly strong algorithms. But what that means is that when you start searching for stuff, we all get the same information. We are all likely to get the same information from Google. And what makes it worse, it's not just that we're searching for it and we get the same information, it's that Google starts to help us as we type. And that isn't helpful when we are being herded. We are being herded to exactly the same information. And you know the way that the brain works? It's like any other processor. Input, process, output. Any of you who have got anything to do with data, any of you who ever spend any time in Excel, know that if you've got crap data, you will get crap results. Yeah? I mean, computer programmers have the term for this. GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. It also works with obvious in, obvious out. Low quality information in, low quality results. The brain is a processor. And if we are all getting the same stuff, we are all likely to come up with the same limited ideas. There was a study that was done in 2011 by some researchers between Columbia and Harvard. And they got people in and they got them to do some clerical work and they said, right, I want you to type in some stuff into the computer. We just want you to do some data entry. So people are doing data entry. And some of the time it would say, yep, that's been saved. Boop. Error, this sort of lovely sort of message, yep, saved. And some of the time it would go, computer error, wasn't saved. So people would go through, they'd finish the task, and they did a study at the end where they got them to do a memory test. And they found that the stuff that had been saved, people hadn't remembered. But the stuff that it said the computer hadn't saved it, people were more likely to remember. The computer hadn't saved it, so kind of they had. So they then sort of took it one stage further. And people would do the data entry, and it would say, it's been saved in this folder. And it would tell you the folder they've been saved in. And then it would occasionally go, yeah, hasn't been saved. And then they did the memory thing again. And of course, people were more likely to remember the stuff that hadn't been saved. But for the stuff that had been saved, they were more likely to remember the folder that had been stored in than the thing itself. Now, this is something that ended up being called the Google effect. It's a behavioral economic principle, and it basically means that if we think something is stored on a computer or on an internet, we don't bother remembering it because we can find it. Now, that itself, again, is a problem because if we want to be able to connect the dots to come up with ideas, you first have to be able to collect the dots. They have to be in your head. If they're not in your head, you cannot work with them. If they're stored on a computer, they do not help you at that time. So we're actually recalling less and less information. We're storing less information in our heads. And there's only one way that we know to get around this. And it is when you see something digitally, it is to rewrite it in your own words. That forces you to understand it. And to reword it, it makes sure, as you're then using motor function, preferably do it with handwriting, you're using motor function, it helps you remember it better. So if there's stuff that you see online you want to remember, don't just bookmark it, actually write it down in your own words, and you will remember it, and it will be useful to you. Now, happiness is quite important to us, we believe, as a species. And there's been studies that have been done into social media use and happiness. How many of you here are on Facebook? How many of you here are on Instagram? How many of you here are on MySpace? Where did you all go? It's just me on there. It's me and Tom. MySpace Tom was just hanging out together all the time. So they've done studies into social media use, and they've found that the more you use social media, the more miserable you are as a human being. And I'm not kidding. This is absolutely true. A total correlation between happiness and social media use. So the thing here is if you want to be able to generate ideas, you're better at generating ideas when you're happy. You're also better at judging when you're pissed off. So use social media only before you need to judge something. Then when you're feeling crap about yourself, you're going to be better at judging. Isn't that good? So as you can imagine, I'm quite concerned about some of the stuff that technology does, because what we're doing is we're just embracing the yin and yang of technology. We're just taking it wholesale at the moment. And I think that we should be looking at technology and going, what's the benefits, what are the drawbacks? Let's mitigate the drawbacks and boost the benefits. We've not been doing that, and that's been leading to these kind of effects, like social media having an effect on our mood. So what I've done is I've created a product that is designed to help this. It's compatible with any device. It never runs out of power. You don't even have to plug it in and recharge it. It's amazing. And it is 100% guaranteed effective. So I'm going to demonstrate it for you just now on some technology. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you the nudge. Hold on a second, need to fix the screen as well. Oh, that's brilliant. I mean, as you can imagine, it doesn't just work on the big devices. It also works on smaller pieces of technology as well. Hold on, I think it just needs just a little bit more processing. There we go. So I'm hoping that this will be able to help you. If any of you want to try out your own technology, I will have this with me over lunch. And I would like to thank you very much for putting up with me, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Just for a second, Dave. Brilliant. Thank you, Dave. I was going to ask one quick question there, which without, other than the use of the nudge, how else can we get this balance back in our day-to-day lives?
I think we need to be using things like digital detoxes. I think we need to be doing stuff to be able to remove ourselves from technology and get used to, you know, I find as much as I preach against this stuff, this thing, wasn't my real phone. Okay? This thing here still, when I'm watching something on television, will still somehow, I don't know how to manage it, creeps into my hand. And you all know this thing, and you end up, you'll realize you've picked it up, and you just go to stuff, and you go to your email or your Twitter, whatever, and you do your kind of like pull down to refresh thing, and then you go, I did that about 2 minutes ago. What really do I think has happened in the last 2 minutes that's actually going to come in? And I start hating myself. But I think that we need to find ways of being able to start to remove ourselves from this, remove our dependency from it. So there's people that I know that have started up digital detox holidays that force you to get away from this stuff. I'm about to try moving to a really old technology phone that doesn't have all this sort of email and processing power to try and pull me away from that. But there's stuff that there's companies that are doing, I think it's Daimler do, that when their staff go on holiday, instead of the emails piling up and the staff getting stressed while they're on holiday, they delete all the emails that come in while they're on holiday with a message saying that your email has been deleted. This person you're trying to reach will be back on such and such a date. If it's really important, email this person. And it gives them an alternative email address. So it means that when the person comes back from holiday, they're not stressed. They're not stressed out, but I have got 7,000 emails to go through. None of that. It means that they're starting from fresh on that morning, and it doesn't ruin all the relaxation they've had on their holiday. So I think organizations need to be thinking of sensible stuff like that. But I think we also need to take responsibility for ourselves and realize that we don't just take technology because it's there. We have to start thinking about it and measuring it up. Is this good for me? Is it not good for me? And then deal with it.
Wonderful. Are there any questions from the audience for Dave before we move on?
No, you're all scared.
Yeah, exactly.
Who wants to ask something?
Yeah. Keep your phones away from later. Brilliant. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.